So visual technology is rapidly evolving from the early days of LED video processing to the latest advances in lighting, video, and cameras. Everything now is becoming more and more part of a single network. So we're going to show this in action in the real world and show you a new ecosystem of experience here with a case study of Eurovision Song Contest 2024. This was our first ever 100 gig ST2110 live event broadcast. So about me, I'm a critical viewing specialist at Megapixel. I have a background working in Hollywood in production and technical roles, focused in cinematography, and I got into LED video processing through ICVFX a few years back. Megapixel has hundreds of patents and many awards for our accomplishments over the years, over 20 years of industry firsts, starting in 2003 with Raster Mapper, the first ever pixel mapping software. Fast forward all the way to the Helios, which is right here in the middle of the exquisite sandwich. It's the first 8K web-based multi-user LED video processor, which now has ST2110 100 gig input directly. So Eurovision planning starts immediately after the show ends for the next year. Technical suppliers exist to aid in the production of the event and allow Eurovision to each year use cutting-edge brand new technology for the first time with embedded manufacturer support. 2024 was the first time since 2009 Eurovision where a single supplier was responsible for lighting, sound, video, and broadcast equipment. So our relationship with NEP and CT was a key factor here. At Megapixel, we've been involved with Eurovision since the Rotterdam show in 2021. The production has a very strong history of always deploying brand new technology. So with that comes risk. Risk is mitigated by advanced planning and the crews return in many cases for multiple years. So there's some consistency with that. So for 2024, they wanted to run the entire LED system on ST2110. We were onboarded as an embedded technical supplier, and we worked very closely with Creative Technology to deploy it for the production. Some of the motivations for why 2110 was to reduce rack space, latency, and the amount of equipment that was needed. The video village system was drastically reduced in size thanks to not having to deal with HDMI, SDI conversion and routing. So we can identify some of the pain points that were unique to the show. We need to move tons of video data around. We've got redundant systems, very little on-site time to troubleshoot if things aren't working out of the box. Rehearsal time is tight, and stage time is limited due to the number of acts for the show. There's 26 acts from different countries, one after the next. Add in all the usual complexity of baseband, like complex routing, latency, and points of failure. It becomes an even bigger issue on the show. So we're at the mercy of other products such as network switches, media servers. So we need to work with these other manufacturers very closely to ensure compatibility. So if we identify some of the limitations of baseband formats, we've got bandwidth and cable limitations that restrict the quality of your video at high resolutions. Cable length restrictions make large venues a challenge to deal with. Complex signal distribution requires multiple converters and splitters. Limited scalability with more sources adds more complexity and costs. And as these shows get more and more demanding, and we're using standards to create these very non-standard shows. So the advantages of 2110, we've got IP-based architecture that improves flexibility and scalability. Nothing we do here is really standard. So the design, programming, commissioning, operation, and maintenance of systems is greatly simplified as well. The consolidation of multiple streams over a single network reduces the complexity of the network. We're reducing latency and providing robust redundancy to guarantee high performance. And the simplified infrastructure with reduced physical equipment and lower power consumption. So what you're seeing here is the entry from Sweden. This had on-stage LED. Every country, every performance had their own unique set pieces, which had to be tested and ready to go on stage in proper position in 45 seconds. So these kinds of setups reflect the drastically different nature of each performance, and this all had to be taken into account when building the system. So for context, this is what the stage looks like to the audience. The back wall is 680 row black quartz tiles. The floor is 540 black marble tiles. And the cubes, which move up and down on hoists, were row vanish. So given the floor is pure LED, this allows the team to do much faster changeovers because it's a field of cue markers. So during these setup changes, everybody knows exactly where everything goes because it's on the LED floor itself. And this is what a changeover looks like from the audience perspective. So while this is happening, there's a postcard segment that airs on the broadcast feed, and the entire stage is being reset for the next act. So for each of the 26 acts, they have about 50 seconds to accomplish this task. You can see all the systems being tested, cameras all being lined up, and all the set pieces being put into place. And the act begins. So this is a bird's eye view of the network that was on the show. We have two systems, red and blue, and the front of house system can see and control both networks. The content creation suite is also connected to the network to push new content to the media servers. And you can see we've got a mixture of 25 gig, 100 gig, and 200 gig links. So on the show, we also used Helios seamless loop redundancy, where each tile is continuously receiving data from both links on both ends, and it's displaying packets as they arrive to the LED tile. And it only cares which packet it receives first, doesn't care where it comes from. So if there is a failover, you would never know by looking at the stage. You would have to look at the software dashboards that I'll show you in a minute here. And this is the entire video rack setup for Eurovision. It's quite small considering the scale of the show. Also in the venue, they physically had a small space that it had to fit into. So it was beneficial to use 2110 for this. We had 10 media servers, 3 100 gig switches, 14 8K Helios for LED, 45 downstream 10 gig switches, 2 megapixel Omnis monitoring systems, and we had over 1.4 terabits of network bandwidth. Here is the LED monitoring dashboard. So again, you'd be looking at this to detect any issues because you wouldn't be able to see any issues given the redundant systems. The show would go on without a glitch. This is a snapshot of the network dashboard. We see we're pushing 1.35 terabits while this snapshot was taken. And this is the media server dashboard. So we could see if a media server had failed or there was issues with Genlock sync or outputs. So now I'm going to compare the general signal flow here of traditional versus 2110. So with a traditional system, we're using copper cabling. We're using different protocols for all the systems. And all these systems have different physical connections. So all of this adds latency, cost, and points of failure. So let's say there's a failure with video metadata somewhere in here, and now the tiles don't know what color space they're supposed to be in. So in that case, they'd be displaying inaccurate colors. You can manually reset that, but we don't want that to have to happen. We want everything to be seamless and automatic. So with a 2110 data path, all these devices just plug into a network and become devices on a single network. We're bringing all of these different paths into one core, so any piece of equipment can get any piece of data that it needs. So the difference in the amount of rack space needed with 2110 versus HDMI and SDI was significant. It would have been possibly an entire rack just for signal routing that was not needed with 2110. So with 100 gig input, we can take in 8K native sources, 8K 60. We can bring in 4K 60 rasters and stitch it into a single 8K image. We can bring in any kind of custom resolution that equals that amount of bandwidth. So we could do, for example, a 32K wide panorama. And this has all been pre-tested with Matrox, NVIDIA, Unreal Engine, and PIXERA. As you can see, they're running proof right behind us. And some of the benefits, again, we have reduced latency, fewer interconnections, more reliable metadata, robust IT-centric monitoring, leveraging all of the techniques of the IT world in the media world now. And we've got modular and flexible signal ingest. So all of these systems are important. We've got more than just LED here. We've got audio, show comms, lighting, pyro and fog, rigging, things are moving. All of this needs to be part of the ecosystem. So one example here is camera cutting. The camera cutting process on Eurovision, they're not cutting between cameras manually. All the shots are pre-planned and executed by live edit over a network. So that means that all of the camera cuts are frame accurate for the entire show, and they're also timed perfectly with all of the lighting, music, and pyrotechnics. That allows them to do some pretty wild, fast edits that are perfectly synced throughout the entire show. Here's an example of that. All that's automated. So today, now more than ever, we should be utilizing infrastructure that enables creativity rather than stands in the way of it. So from the early days to today, everything is now becoming part of a network, and thanks for having me.